Hello, anybody, somebody, nobody, whoever may ever never hear this. This is Siegfried Alexander Faust, the Whiff, otherwise known as Kevin. Today, I'm going to be recording on Discord. Hopefully, it goes well. I still haven't finished editing the other one, but from what I could tell, it seemed to record well, but I might come through a little bit loud. So if that's the case, sorry to hear that. Let's see. So, the subject for today is people with disabilities. So, what are people with disabilities? A disability is any condition of the body or mind, which is an impairment, that makes it more difficult for the person with the condition to do certain activities, or, in that same sense, causes activity limitation and interaction with the world around them, thus participation restrictions. So that's the definition. So, what is a disability? There's a physical disability and a mental disability. A physical disability can be such as a person was born without a leg versus they got in a car accident and lost their leg, but with their disability. But one you could be born with, it's innate. That's due to just roll of the dice genetics, getting snake eyes. For mental disability is, again, a person is not able to possibly do math or concentrate on more than one thing without them like getting super, I don't know, having a lot of anxiety or having pain in different parts of their body, or maybe they can't think very well. And most of these innate mental disabilities, the higher tier ones, will also cause physical issues as well, because there is a bad roll of the dice genetically. Now, there could be an argument saying, like, oh, well, that's an impairment, but, they can still live life and have a great time. Yeah, no one's fucking saying that. No duh. Like, what it is that, like, they probably can't go to space. NASA's not going to want them. If they have an IQ of, 37 or something. I'm just making stuff up, but that's, I hope the point is clear. They could still be happy and live a happy life. I have a family member who's disabled, and she's very happy, but she's not going to be able to have a lot of opportunities. So that's mental and physical disability. You could technically, I'm going to put emotional, psychological, spiritual also in there as well, but it's never really talked about, and they all kind of fall mostly under mental anyway. So let's see, strengths and weaknesses. To be dark, a strength with disability is that if you're able to still mostly get by in life, you're high functioning for most social aspects, then hell, you can see it as getting a free paycheck. Like if you're in the military and you're disabled afterwards, you can get a paycheck. That's physical disability, health disability brought forth from the job, so they legally give you recompense. Same with if you were disabled, just walking down the street, car hit you, and you sue them, etc. So that, and it could be humbling. You can get a humble aspect mentally, because you can get a side of life that not many other people see necessarily. Let's see. There could be certain very niche markets where they actually want disabled people for research or to work together with like maybe a disabled commune or something. I don't know. And so, or maybe you find love, but it's like Christian mingles, but it's like disabled mingles. I don't know if that's a thing, but there's different aspects where it's a strength. But I'd say it's fair to say most times it's not. So weakness. Weakness is, again, it can limit your job options. It could make you dependent on others for many years, if not your entire life. You may not be aware of basic things, and thus you're not treated as well as others because you lack the common sensibilities that others may have through no fault of your own. Life can be harder, more painful, etc. At one point, I dated a person with was it microfibralgia, and so going to another thing with the weakness. Well, no, this is after weakness. So I think it can make it harder to find love, and I think that mostly covers it. Depending on what disability you have. So let's see. Fun facts or important other things that are known. So if there's a huge rise of people who are more disabled now compared to the past, one could argue that again, we didn't have the numbers, and because of big spikes in the population, that the percentage hasn't really changed. There's more people because there's more people. That makes sense, but nonetheless, there's far more mental diagnoses for disabilities now. You can't really fake not having a leg unless you're I don't know, a YouTuber or a streamer, and people simp for you anyway. But there's a lot of people that claim to have depression, anxiety, body pains, etc., that can't necessarily prove it, and it could be something else. It could be a trauma that is phantom, and in that sense, a placebo. And they may be lying to themselves and not aware of it. But if you ever dare say that to anyone, you're a leper. How dare you? How dare you assume their trauma or pain is not real, authentic, blah blah blah. But they're the ones that decide to spend tons on medication, pharmaceutical industry, and if it makes them happy, it makes them get by. Cool. I just think there is a big percentage of people that they probably get by just fine. Maybe I'm biased because I don't really have much wrong with me. So I'm not able to be part of the control, etc. I don't know. I'm brain farting right now. I think I got a bug bite on my hand and it's itchy as hell. Let's see. Another strength is you get a fast pass in Disneyland. All right. I don't know. I mean, it mostly covers it. So now, it's because it's mostly understood that as long as they don't get in the way of other people, people try to give a little bit of extra consideration for disabled people. But if you have a high functioning irritable disabled person, or that they're causing problems for other people, even if they don't realize it, it can get on other people's nerves. Because again, you can't just shove them or tell them off. They may not understand you, or they may get scared and lose their minds, or start beating the shit out of you when you didn't even want to fight them. Just you have no control of the situation in regards to how to deal with them. Really, it's like dealing with someone who actually has crazy level of insanity, legitimate insanity. But I wouldn't even call them sane. They're sane. They're just lower functioning in mental aspects. But that's for the mental side. For physical aspects, god damn, I can't even imagine. I don't run much, so if I lost my legs, I get by still. But not being able to and it's not even just big things like that. It could be this is also big, but being blind or deaf can also be a huge deal. I mean, blind people get by without not knowing what colors are or really look like, but oh my god, I just feel like it's another part of life, and the more we'll be able to, evolve as people, be able to appreciate new things. But so to lose out on that, a person, may never, if I never knew about the best tasting thing in the world and it was always right next to me, then it's not gonna, if I can never access it, then I'm not gonna really probably care. I'll probably be like, darn, this fucking sucks, but it's never gonna really super impact me. But versus if you see it and get taken away, I don't know. But there could be an argument that they don't need pity. They're just as happy and whatnot, but I'd still pity the loss of options, because the way I see it is options. It's better to have more options and not need to make use of them if you don't want to, versus you don't have the ability to. You can still be happy, etc., but now you have a lack of options. Let's see. Super high disabled people still can get jobs, but it's extremely niche. And it could be just real troubling. And I mean, I don't see people really giving them a lot of problems. I don't think that's an issue. The only thing I could think of is again jobs, family life, and school. a lot of people claim ADD, ADHD, etc., or they're slow reader. I was almost put into a special program because I was not doing good in high school. But in some areas, I tested really high. It was all over the place. But I think I'm too much. Way the so I the whole like the American education system at least is a whole other beast. But in regards to special ed people, which I don't have much experience for their education, I'd say we overall do a good job. Um, Compared to other countries, just because our education system in general is better. We have more options as a first world country. And I think that always gets overlooked because people complain, whine, this and that. And, it's good. If we don't have people bitching and moaning, then we're not going to get as much progress in society. But it can also be annoying to listen to. It is what it is. But, if we didn't have a first world society, then we'd be bitching and moaning for more basic things. And we still do that for basic stuff as well. But my point is that it's good that we do it. You get representation, even if it's annoying. And that goes far beyond the scope of just people with disabilities. It can be hard. I mentioned it's hard to deal with them at times. As an adult, again, like if someone was physically disabled, but if we're able to play games or chill, or even if it came to intimacy, then I don't see any of it being an issue. Hold on a second. Hey, is this Ben?
Yep. Hold on.
So I was about to finish up.
Okay, cool. I was about to join. My therapy appointment ended a little later than expected.
That's actually something I didn't necessarily hit on. I guess I could. But while you're here, so I already went over what is a disability, strengths and weaknesses, tidbits of information, but I was going to do a bit more.
Okay.
But also, you can, if you have anything you want to throw in or any quick stories, but I also talk about the American education system a little bit and how it can be
that's
difficult.
fun.
Some people have placebo conditions that they don't want to acknowledge, or they could be having a phantom pain or issue that could be something else. But you're a leper and the devil if you suggest it, but they don't know what they're talking about. So
Yeah,
that is just what that is.
Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you were talking about the disability and the placebo.
People growing into adulthood, going through the school system, whether or not they have different conditions, different kinds of conditions that there are. I already covered all that. So do you have any stories or anything short? Because you work with people in the special industry, or I don't know if you have any input in regards to what you think about should they be treated differently, can it not be helped, the physical aspect, mind aspect, the entire growing up aspect. What are your thoughts on some of this?
Well, I'm sure this was mentioned earlier in the podcast. The disabilities, there's no specific set. The only thing that's really common is that there's something about the individual person that's different from everyone else. It makes them unique, whether they have a physical disability or if they have MS or cerebral palsy or even a learning disability. It's something that makes that individual person unique. So as far as should they be ostracized, absolutely not.
I mean, should anybody really ostracize? I would say that goes for basically everyone. But I know what you mean by that. That it kind of happens because people, you can't really have a conversation about high level amount of physics with someone who has a great level of learning disability. Yeah. And so if they join a math club, which is their right, if they are able to join a math club, they won't really be able to participate. Yeah, so they're going to become naturally ostracized through no fault of their own, most likely, but it's not out of hate. And while we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen, it would also cause issues for the system, etc.
And another thing that I also want to bring up is the these kids who have the learning disabilities, or actually we're gonna go we're gonna go intellectual, like on
All
the
right.
intellectual level. Uh, so instead of, because physical is a different
It
is a
is.
different
For
monster.
that. I talked about people could be born with it, versus you can't usually get a mental one. The physical one would be also
Yeah,
that, like, you could be. I was in the military. I wasn't in the sand. I was in under the ocean, but you could be going. You hit an IED in the Middle East, and you lose your legs. You're
yeah,
now physically disabled. In as far as most people are concerned, you're just about as similar in the present and going into the future as someone who never had their legs. Your paths are different, and there could be different programs available to
yeah.
you slightly, but most of the same things will be available because not if you got your legs. Mental aspect would be, as far as I'm aware, concussion, like concussion or brain tumor removal, or a stroke. Those are the only.
Well, TBI, so traumatic brain injury, it's another like subsection with itself, because uh it's so situational, to where the kid could
What'd you say it
actually, or
was?
the
Sorry.
person can actually recover.
No, 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 no,
It's
no. The name of it.
situational. So the
Okay.
traumatic brain injury,
Awesome.
we
Sorry.
call it
Continue.
TBI. So when dealing with a kiddo who has a TBI, um, you often see progress uh, with interventions and constraints at a much more rapid rate than you would with a person with a learning disability, because as their brain is recovering, so are their so is like the memory and uh, uh, the functional aspects of their academic skills or intellectual skills. But there are some kids who do not have, who are permanently like that. Uh, so yeah, TBI is a very it's one of the most situational things I've had to deal with in my, and mind you, I'm not an expert at this. I've only been at this for like almost 3 years. But I also have a brother who has a disability, and that's a whole different story. And but shifting back to the learning kids with learning disabilities, is with who I work with. There tends to be a baseline, is what we call it in special ed. So where their baseline is how we what we focus on. So when I get the kid when I get my students, I do I teach math, so I do an assessment on how they on what skills they have. The skills range from basic addition to, I think the highest I go up to, because
Do you get
they're eighth grade.
retested on their baseline, or is that like something that happens? Okay.
Yep, every quarter I retest them on
When?
their
How often
baseline.
is that? Oh, quarter, quarter,
Every
quarter. Okay.
quarter, so 9 weeks.
Cool.
Every nine
I didn't.
weeks
I thought it'd be slower
and
than
see
that.
what
That's
skills.
awesome.
Yeah, so I see, where their growth is, and I don't have, my job doesn't entail, like, it's not a requirement of my job
Really, it's
to
not.
do that,
Wouldn't
but I
the
do
state
that.
or federal require that or
No,
something?
um,
County.
no, you have to test. So each kid who has an IEP has an individual goal that has to be measured quarterly. I do this based on their IEP. I do this as an assessment based on their mathematical skills, because I teach them math. So when I have to go to an IEP meeting, I use their baseline as part of their date, as a starting point for my data that I've collected on them. and I use it to measure their growth throughout the quarter. Does that
Yeah, it
make
does.
sense?
Thanks for providing that information. That's some cool information that I didn't know about. Regarding the school system and its testing its baselines.
Yeah. But yeah, that's not part of my job. My part of my job is to teach them a modified curriculum for mathematics. So they are given the 8th grade standards, or if I taught 7th grade, or if I taught algebra, they are given the same standards, but they're in a smaller, or what we call in Arizona, a self-contained
Okay.
classroom, to where they're put in these in this smaller situation, because the general ed classroom, which in Arizona we have like 30 to 45 kids, can be overwhelming for someone who needs extra
Yeah.
support.
Let's see. So,
Um, but learning disabilities, and with learning disabilities, one more thing I want to get before we move on. Uh, Learning disabilities, uh, when you start at their baseline, you see growth, but the growth is a lot slower than what you would see in a with a regular a non a child with a
yeah.
non disability. Uh, it may take them a quarter to understand what it's like to plot points, but
Dude, I
you
feel
do
bad. I
see
always
it.
actually sucked at plotting points. I hated that stuff. Fuck that shit.
I know it,
uh,
that that teach. I'm like, how the fuck do you guys get this? When I was your age, I was like, what the fuck is this
right.
put in
Something
front
I
of me?
mentioned is that I was tested to see if I was need to be put in a special program because I was kind of slow in high school as well. Feels bad.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, they thought I was when I was in when I were in my home state. They thought I was a special ed child, but when we moved up to Wisconsin, they were like, "Oh no, you're the child. This kid is he's just a regular
so let's
kid."
see. Um, three other things I've thought of while you're talking that I didn't mention previously is I mentioned emotional, but that fell into the mind. However, that is something that's being brought up more.
Yes. Ooh, that's
Uh,
what I wanted to get into next. Emotional EBD, emotional behavioral
right.
disabilities. We call them EBDs. Uh, tend to it's not just where they have these people often misinterpret these children with EBD as emotional outbursts, to where it's a they're violent. Where no, I've had kids who do excessive crying, who I've had kids who don't feel like any type of, like, it's like almost like a baseline
Okay.
psychopath tendencies, which they lumped into emotional behavioral. Uh, there's also PTSD is another big disturbance. Like, I've had kids who are living in cars. I had one kid on that I've taught watched his father's brains get blown up in
Yeah,
front of
you
him.
mentioned that to me. So some of the stuff that my friend Benny has been mentioning, I
Yeah.
already knew about, but for posterity, he's been mentioning it so people who listen to this in the future can kind of get like an unbiased thing. And some stuff I may not necessarily know, of course, but I'm not,
Now, one thing, how EBD entails into special ed, or into a disability, at least in the school, on the school level, is we ask ourselves, is this emotional disturbance of the person, is it hindering their academic abilities? And that's usually how
whether or
they
not.
qualify
Okay,
for
cool.
special ed,
I,
whether or not they're special ed.
okay.
And that's pretty
So the
much
other
it.
two things is stuff I mentioned. It can be hard for them to get a job, do certain things in life, etc. One of those things I didn't mention is intimacy. Because if you think about it like this, that are they, if a person is not, let's say, physically disabled, like, you're missing an arm, but what if someone is severely mentally disabled and they're potentially physically disabled from birth? And maybe they're not going to live a long life. Should they Are they not allowed
Okay.
to have intimacy? I think to say that they would not would be crime against humanity. But at the same time, there's two things that go into that. One, everyone makes a choice because people are anti-rape. That is good. We do not support that. But in that sense, that means,
Yeah.
well, who would necessarily want to be with that person? And if they're extremely low functioning, they could possibly be with nobody. But they may never understand that, and that could be fine. But that's another thing that can go into pity. If they do, let's say they do, then they're not going to be able to parent, which would be an issue, and it's a high chance for the child to be extremely disabled or not be born correctly. Which would mean, that's the whole like the religious side, bringing life into here, no abortion and all that. And so that's just, a really adult subject that's like you don't want to approach. Another one is like, okay, what if they should have access to every job? What if, are they going to go in the porn industry? You're going to get special ed people in porn, and I don't mean physical, I mean mental. It's like, how dare you? But it's like one of those things as well where it's like, well, can they not find love? What if they want to do a job? You're going to tell them no, even if they're qualified? And it's so barbarically like off left field, but I think legitimately it still is correct. And because we put them in this special thing where it's like we have all these benefits for them, and we have this sense that we provide for them that they are disabled. But if they start doing things that do not fit that niche, that do not fit the clique of what is a disabled person, that is so left field, then they no longer necessarily will feel that way, or we have to treat them differently because it's so different. And then the last one I want to mention is also dark. It's The Purge. So the movie The Purge, yes.
Purge?
So the movie Idiocracy points fun at people just who are high intelligence and beneficial, mostly considered good beneficial traits, not making enough, not pumping out enough babies, and us people being greedy in general, greedy humanity, and the people who are classic tropes of pushy and maybe good looking in some aspects, having a lot of kids, but then they might have a genetic defect, and that gets passed on, it gets multiplied. And then you'd be faced with society where they're not very smart, and it could cripple the world. And that'd be so ridiculously and fictional. But you can check out the population growth, which is pretty funny for the last couple centuries. And have you ever seen that thing where it's like the spike over the last 3 centuries of population on the planet? It's insane. That is GameStop stock got nothing on that. So that is one of the biggest spikes. And it's undeniable too. Literally, we've gone from having millions on the planet to what? Do we have trillion? We have 3 trillion or something. I think. No, yeah, the trillion would be ridiculous. No, because that's 100. Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry. So, yeah, many billions. But still, though, so we're going to have population issues in the world, and people with disabilities, be it innate or non-innate, physical, mental, both, or maybe something new in the future, who knows, I can't see the future, will impact them, and they're going to be part of the populace. And so if we don't curb our population control, which would be something really dark, what if we euthanize, sorry, yeah, Jesus Christ. What is it when you prevent animals from having kids? What's it?
Well, in the dog and cat form,
spay and neuter. So but I mean, you don't have mentally heavily disabled people going out having tons of kids. But nonetheless, this is something that I would have to be considering all vectors of thought, because and just give me one more minute. And so there's also the welfare side of things as well, which again, resources. There's too many people on the planet. We just had COVID, and it's of course a tragedy, but we take from Mother Gaia, which is the hippiest thing ever. I've said this month, but it's resources are not unlimited, and I'm in a first world country. I make use of a lot of resources I don't necessarily need to use. In the way that I do, it's not efficient. I use plastics, etc. And this might feel like a roundabout thing, but again, um, what I would like is to make it so the people that are blind are no longer blind, deaf are no longer deaf. If we can give better leg options, regrow legs or whatever for people that lose limbs, and for people with mental disabilities, or stuff that's innate that would cause major problems or taxation upon other people and strain resources, to make it so hopefully in a beneficial, good, morally way is no longer an issue. But yeah. Now, is there anything you wanted to say? Last like minute or two? No more.
Yes. So one thing, people with disabilities, if we're talking like really lower functioning, like if we're talking Down syndrome or severe intellectual disabilities.
Yeah.
Okay. So
But not necessarily. It's just everyone. It's all like the encompassing like dome.
Okay.
Of people with disabilities.
Well, if we're going into that, the love aspect, some of them do find love. The ones who do develop the whose minds do develop into an official like adult mind where they become not really sexually active, but they mimic to what a middle school crush would have.
So does that consist of sliding all up in you?
Yes.
Someone in his class actually said that, so that's why I'm poking fun at Ben.
Yeah, sometimes like when I worked with the cross category kids, these are the kids with Down syndrome, severe autism.
Yeah.
Severe intellectual disabilities. There were some kids that did become sexually active, and we had to stop them. Now, mind you, so that
like 30 more seconds, Ben.
Yeah. So with that, they often do find love when they get transitioned to homes. Otherwise, their minds aren't developed enough to think about that. One more other thing I wanted to mention was actually no, that was pretty much it.
Are you sure?
I think, yeah, I forgot what my second point was, but there's less than 10 seconds.
Okay. Only because you're about almost 20 minutes late, man, and I was already gonna finish it. Sorry, man. Let's see. So again, wonderful people. There's wonderful people, and then there's bad people. But if you ever say a disabled person's bad, you could possibly be treated on the leper. There's also good people with bad situations. Stuff happens in the world. Life moves on. And
there's a lot of myths.
Yeah, there's a lot of myths, and there's also evolving situations. Humans are evolving, and we're getting better and worse in different areas. So take it with a grain of salt. Always, be kind to your neighbor, but at the same time, don't necessarily. If they're not heavily disabled, if they demand to go into a restaurant with their 8 emotional service chihuahuas.
There's a 10-second snippet I also want to add in. Just a 10-second snippet. Just because the person has a disability doesn't necessarily mean they're limited to what they can't do. Many people with disabilities go on to live, who receive special education services in school, go on to live normal lives just like everyone else.